Okay, I need to come clean about something, actually, right off the bat for the listeners and you. I spent a little while on my YouTube channel, this was years ago, trying to turn people against you.
Oh,
that's right. I know.
It because I just got an email the other day from somebody who said he was like an arch troll for years. And now I'm on this very small private email list with a friend of ours, Tom Cowan. And he's like recovered himself and cured himself. And now he's a huge fan. This is amazing. I want to know more. I want to know more about the experience.
This is what happens. Because then as people like me, we get to learn a little more and do a little introspection. We're like, oh, maybe she's right about everything. So, I watched, I watched, this was years ago. So I was on medication for a long time, like 12 years. So automatically on my YouTube channel, it's all people really diagnosed with depression and anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. Let's put the labels on just for fun. And I was, I guess, an example of someone who takes medication who's doing well. So I was like a kind of, a great example. And then I see you and you're preaching mental health and all these great things, but you're anti-medication. And then my little mechanism of threat comes on and I'm like, well, I have to defend myself, but then all of these other people. Do you get that in your practice and people that discover you for the first time? Do you get backlash like that?
It's very helpful to hear what you're saying, because a lot of the personal, if you want to call it spiritual work that I've done over the past couple of years is under the umbrella of shadow work, right? So how am I projecting on others that I judge parts of me that I'm not aware of yet, that I haven't learned how to accept or love? And I've discovered a lot there. It's a huge catacomb full of ugly parts of me that I would rather not be aware of. And that kind of anti that you referred to, that anti-medication, is very accurate. Mm-hmm. However, that is the same energy as all the other antis, right? The antihypertensives, the antibiotics, the antidepressants, the anti-anxiety medications that I would seek to undermine, right? So I, at this point, and for some time, would like to consider myself pro-informed consent, because I think, it's a very, very difficult path, and we all take the exact path that we are meant to take. I'm a believer in that. However, it's a difficult path, it's like hiking in the snow barefoot kind of a thing, to not have had information in time that would have awakened something within you that already was there, a knowing, right? That would have reminded you of something that you already kind of know, right? That's, it's tough. It's a tough road. I am not here to suggest what's best for anybody. I mean, trust me, I've tried with family, I've tried with close friends. And that's why I'm so interested in what you're sharing, because in my experience, people don't change their mind because of information. And maybe the opposite is true, where they become more entrenched and they dig their heels in when information feels like an assault to their identity or a judgment or a condemnation. I've had entire websites literally devoted to me and erected, calling me I remember one of them was the ugly ableism of Kelly Brogan, right? And I thought, wow, so I'm also a believer that all criticism has at least a kernel of truth. And I found that to be the case. I've been trolled endlessly for years and years, and they never really lie, and these are even like the pharma funded bots, I mean, apart from calling me, gross profanity or whatever, they don't, it's not, it's like criticism of what I would charge in my private practice, or, that I would recommend supplement or whatever. It was never really an egregious lie. Yeah. And so I always sort of took that as a reflection that there's some way I could be meeting the world that comes more from my heart, and my true passion, for what it is that I've discovered, which actually isn't a fight against anything. I'm a huge believer in the Bucky Fuller sentiment, that you don't fight the existing system. You create a new one that renders it obsolete. That is the way. And, aren't we being invited toward that in this moment in time now? It's so challenging because we don't even know how to expand into creativity. We only know how to say, I don't like that, right? So I spent years, because I was so dyed in the wool, I was such a believer, hardcore, and plus blood, sweat, and tears, working 100 hours a week, getting paid like $3 an hour, getting abused by higher ups. I mean, it's a typical, hierarchical system like the military or anything else is designed that way to break you down and steal your soul. Ask any doctor. And when I sort of felt the victimhood of having been fed this pile of lies and not having been exposed to so much medical literature, scientific literature that told a completely different story about the relevance of lifestyle factors, I felt really angry, like rage, like sword aloft for years. And, I just started went into PubMed and started collecting like bullets, like all of these studies, and I jammed them all in my first book. And then I had to do some healing because I was turning into, in perhaps subtle ways, but I felt it, like, as Nietzsche said, I was turning into the monster I was fighting. And I see that with a lot of activists. We all have deep childhood wounds. We all do, period, but activists do for sure. And we project the bad parts of ourselves onto the parentified authority, which in my case is the medical system or the government.
Right.
So, so now I'm very interested in just celebrating what's possible.
Well, I think you hit a few points there. I had a Dr. Sam Vaknin on the podcast, and he does a lot of work in narcissism. And a lot of activism and the protests we see are straight out of narcissism. And a lot of what we see in politics comes straight out of narcissism. Mm-hmm. So that's one point. And I felt the same thing, like talking about mental health and now having this new enlightened experience. I'm actually going to say that, and I'm sure you experience that talking to your clients when they come off of antidepressants. Just seeing everything again for the first time. That's what I like to say, saying everything again for the first time. But I know what you mean is you're kind of, instead of beating up an old system, you're really creating a new one. And in itself, it's kind of beating up the old system automatically. Exactly. But what are you really creating now then? What are you excited about? But actually, first, I need to ask you this. Why did you become a psychiatrist? What other options were out there? What about a psychologist? What about just an MD? What about a veterinarian?
Yeah, that's a great question. I went to MIT for college, and MIT, at least at the time, was fairly notorious for its completed suicide rate, right? It was like an issue. And there was a free hotline you could call, and it was destigmatized because you could call for like the Domino's pizza delivery number, or you could call because you're literally, and this happened, about to jump out of the green building, like the tallest building in Boston. And I worked that hotline, and we were up all night, fielding these calls. And I was supervised by a psychiatrist, very kind, kind of classical, archetypal psychiatrist guy, older guy. And I just found it fascinating, that he could mitigate human suffering in these ways. And we funneled people to the psychiatric system. Essentially, that's what we did with this hotline. And it felt like, there is a triangle, right? Like the savior, the victim, perpetrator, right? So it's very easy for us to identify with the savior and to derive a sense of worth that we are fundamentally lacking from within, from this adoption of the role of helper. And, look at all the jobs there are in the world. They're all service kinds of jobs for the most part, right? And so I felt like, okay, well, this feels really good and actually powerful, that I can do something to save people's lives and make people feel better. And so I went to medical school to become a psychiatrist. I had a tangent kind of for a couple of years where I thought I might become an OBGYN because I was born like a militant feminist. I don't know, like out the womb. And my feminism has evolved a lot over the years, a lot, to the point where I have been attacked to the point of death threats by big feminist groups since 2016.
Oh, that's not surprising.
It's not. Yeah. So for me, I was like, wait, I'm with you girls. Like, what are you?
Yeah.
But yeah, and particularly for my perspectives on birth and birth control pills, and of course antidepressants. And I really just found like, wow, this has nothing to do with supporting women. That the field of OBGYN is just is ill constructed, and anyone who's in that field is working in a way that is probably not aligned with their soul, and it's very difficult. So I was like, okay, forget that. I'm going to become a women's health psychiatrist. Great. I get to know the whole person. I get to develop a relationship. And that's what I did. And I went on to become one of actually the first 300 in the world reproductive psychiatrists, as they're called. And I specialized in, wait for it, medicating pregnant and breastfeeding women with all of the medications, like everything under the sun, from Haldol to Klonopin, anything that falls into the psychotropic category. I have some experience medicating a pregnant or breastfeeding woman with it, because I was trained to look at the literature. So that's where I learned how to look at literature, analyze it, understand how to pick it apart, which you can do for any single study. And I was comparing, untreated, sometimes abrupt withdrawal from medication. So untreated mental illness, I'll put that in quotes, with medication that a patient, perhaps in your case, was relatively stable on. So then I would, collect all the registry data to basically say, well, most of these babies are born with 5 fingers or maybe that, but 10 fingers and 10 toes.
Yeah.
And, looks okay. So we're waiting for the long-term data, but it's kind of the lesser of two evils. And I'm a caring person. I cared deeply about my patients, and that was the choice that I made. So I've been that person, and now I am the person who, has not written a prescription for a patient in 11 years and wouldn't under any circumstances. I just wouldn't. It's a commitment, ethical commitment I have to myself.
Wow.
And I'm still the same person, right? Yeah. So what is that? It's helped me to understand that the evolution of belief is at the core of how we relate to our own embodiment and what it is to be human, how we define health. And, recently I've even written, that there are some entities in the governmental or public sector realm that would be hard pressed to define health as anything other than the absence of death. Right?
Yeah.
So that's not how I define it. I'm pretty sure it's not how you define it. However, that definition is very essential before you even embark upon engaging any system, holistic or conventional or otherwise, around feeling better, seeking to feel
right. Well, even just I think it revolves around education too. It's people, you think it's because someone can run a marathon, they tag this person as healthy. And then you see certain COVID cases of, this healthy 25-year-old, got COVID. And then we're seeing, okay, now we're looking into it. And actually it's like low blood sugar, he's diabetic, all these different cases. So that's a really good point. Now, you actually call yourself a holistic psychiatrist, and not to insult you at all. It seems like an oxymoron to a lot of people, doesn't it? Right? I think it's a beautiful term. I was speaking with Dr. Amen from the US, and he was talking about, there needs to be, and I think you're a beautiful leader in this category of psychiatry, where people do drop the pad and pen now and look elsewhere instead of just clusters of symptoms. So what does holistic psychiatrist mean?
Yes, I've been received feedback. How about that? I've received feedback from the public around my self-referential terminology like that, that I call myself a psychiatrist, but then I judge psychiatry and psychiatrists. And that's not untrue. The reason that I think it's still helpful is because I think of myself as a bridge, right? Like I with my husband Sayer, we have a community called Vital Life Project. And there are so many people in our online community who have so many gifts and such a rich reservoir of knowledge and wisdom about the new world we are creating, right? Permaculture, regenerative, homemaking, and all manner of peacemaking with the earth. let alone, canning and fermenting and food storage and the things that, I've been focusing on emancipating myself and others from the medical system. I don't know. I'm just learning about, things like digital currency. I'm a novice in so many things now because I've been focused. Those are the people who know. It's like I'm pointing that way. It's like I'm saying the house is on fire. Go there. They're going to help you, right? I'm not the one waiting over there. I am still cut from the cloth of the conventional establishment. That is a part of me. I know how, quote unquote, they think because I was them and I still am that person, right? So referring to myself as a psychiatrist is helpful because we're still thinking in terms of the subdivided human, like the picture of the cow and all the parts kind of a thing. Yeah. And psychiatrist is what you think when you feel like you don't want to live anymore, when you can't get out of bed because you just don't feel like it's worth it, when you're so anxious that you cannot be present to anything in your life, when you're so forgetful that you literally can't, bring your car keys to the car ever, when you, have dissociative experiences and you feel yourself floating above yourself and you don't know how to anchor, when you have perceptual disturbances and you don't know if you heard something or not, the list goes on and on. People are entrained and enculturated to associate that with one discipline, which is psychiatry.
Right.
When you have a seizure, you think neurologist. When you have, blood in the toilet, you think gastroenterologist. When you have a numb arm, whatever, we think that way because we haven't yet understood collectively that this is a web and you only ever need one specialist. And that specialist is literally you. It is you. And the path to understanding how to doctor yourself, in my case, has been like a decade-long path of dedication and commitment. Maybe it's shorter for some people.
Well, you dealt with some severe physical illnesses, didn't you? And
It could have been severe. But within the first year of being diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's, which is, speaking of epidemics, extremely common, it can be quite disabling and recidivistic. And I was always taught, there's no cure. It's not, you don't cure an autoimmune disorder. It's just something you manage, right? And when I was first diagnosed, I just sort of hit the eject button. I was like, I'm not taking a prescription for the rest of my life. Like, homie, don't play that. I'm not doing that. It was just not something it was anathema to me, even though I'd written prescriptions every day for how many years? At that point, almost 10. Yeah. And I was very motivated because I wanted out of that hamster wheel. And I knew that all the women I had ever treated never felt fully well once they started on a synthetic thyroid hormone. So, my symptoms were like brain fog, forgetfulness, swings in metabolism, hair loss, and, just a kind of flatness, I would say, like mood flatness. I was postpartum. So it's very easy to chalk up to new motherhood, which I think is very commonly the case because this is extremely common postpartum and can manifest, by the way, as literal psychosis, literally. So, it doesn't always manifest as what looks like depression, although that's pretty common. Can also look like anxiety. So it's like I call it a psychiatric masquerader.
Yeah.
But, I dodged a bullet of indentured servitude to the medical model because I had that little voice inside me that said, go see a naturopath. I didn't know how to doctor myself at that point. I didn't even know what that meant. Of course you want, some specialist to tell you what to do.
Totally.
That feels very calming. And also they validate your sense that something is wrong. And even if it's not because they give you a diagnosis, which is very insidious in the mental health realm, because, I'm sure you would agree, I think you would, that first time that you got a diagnosis probably was both sort of like, oh, wow, okay. But also like, you see, I knew something was wrong with me.
Right. Yes. It's nice to put a finger on it and finally be like, oh, that's the thing. And there it is. And all I need to do to get rid of that is to take one of these or to do certain things. It is a freeing feeling. Yeah. Also a scary feeling for sure. So for you, there was like obviously a push factor, but with any like decision and change in life, there's usually a push and a pull. What was the pull factor to kind of to leap you into do we use the word natural? What is natural? That's a weird word, like health too.
It's greenwashed. Yeah, I use the word lifestyle because it's all about choice. And I find choice to be, the human superpower. Viktor Frankl has an amazing quote about how it's the one thing no one can take from you is the choice, even just to narrate what is happening to you in your own words, right? To always retain the power to issue forth your perspective on a matter, let alone make behavioral choices. So most of what I engaged in and, the subsequent protocol I put together is just about the simple choices you make every single day and how to send your nervous system this comprehensive signal of safety to begin to heal literally the neurobiology of victimhood, or, what in psychology is called learned helplessness. Healing that is what unlocks regenerative capacity that is innate. It's inbuilt. You can't design it. You can't supplement it. You can't medicate it. That's for sure. It has to be like facilitated, unlocked. It's like the conditions have to be created like any other complex system. You want to grow beautiful food. Any gardener or farmer knows the soil is where it's at. And that is not something you can dump fertilizer and expect it to happen. It's these gentle but care-oriented conditions that have to be created, and there's really no other way for the type of complex growth and manifestation to surface. But that's what I've found is when the conditions are set and they start with mindset, they start with perspective, belief, and they are facilitated by these daily choices that you're in control of, right? So what time are you waking up? What are you doing when you wake up? What are you eating for breakfast? What are you drinking? How are you working your schedule? Are you moving? These simple things that seem like, oh, please, that's wellness. And, the wellness in ways has done a great disservice to the potential for radical lifestyle facilitated healing to have made it, to the medical headlines. And not to be, critical, but because I think it's the market is so super saturated and isn't like anchored with any, sort of, shared language, which is something of which science can be. It seems like, oh yeah, I'll do that just to kind of make my hair a little shinier, or like decrease my bloating a little or whatever.
Yes.
No, these choices, and this is what I've become so passionate about, is that once I saw my own, condition go into full remission in black and white, I needed to see it in black and white. That's how my brain works. My antibodies in the high 2000s normalized, my TSH normalized. I saw that and I became a believer. N of one medicine, they call it. One patient defies, the dogma. If one patient can, and I know there were many before me, but if one patient can put Hashimoto's into remission through lifestyle change, then the fact that it is a chronic illness is no longer true.
Right.
It can be, but that's not the writing definition or the gold standard. And so I guess unconsciously set out to start to put little pins on the wall in all of these diagnostic categories. And I took all comers, whether it was people with psychotic symptoms, suicidal depression, bipolar, OCD, eating disorders, whatever. And lo and behold, all of their medical comorbidities, so whether they had lupus or reflux or asthma or polycystic ovary or whatever, all of these other things started to fall into remission as well. And I had no intention, no expertise specifically in those other diagnoses. So that's how I began to see, wow, it's all this web, and you set the conditions and the human physiology corrects itself, but it cannot happen. You can put two people through this same lifestyle protocol and one will be like, meh, that was a waste of my month.
Right.
The other will have a history making outcome. And I found that the difference between the two came down to a pre-existing, like a preceded, meaning like SEED, preceded belief. that was already there. I did not give it to them. So in science, this is called selection bias, that the people who come to me, the patients who come to me, or even come to me online or whatever, they already believe. Right. So you probably didn't.
Nice head start.
Yeah, you probably didn't read a single thing I've ever written with an open heart until you already yourself believed it. I didn't.
Totally.
I know I didn't give it to you because I've never convinced anyone of anything. And so that, whatever that is, it can't be induced, it can't be coerced, but it is the secret sauce, it's so ineffable. I don't know what characterizes it. Why does somebody wake up when they do? I don't know. In my case, it was kind of obvious. I was like, I don't want to take a pill. How about I try this? Tried it. It worked. Okay, great. And that was the beginning of my journey. But for most people, it starts somewhere earlier, and it's very mysterious. It's beautiful.
But I think it's beautiful. And then at the same time, when anyone faces any kind of change, even the thought of change is threatening. Like when I saw your stuff, I was so threatened. I'm like, wait a second. Yeah. Everything I believed about medicine, like something massive, which is why a lot of us are here today, like everything or a lot of it is wrong. Like what my psychiatrist has been telling me for 10 years is wrong. He lied to me. They gave me medication when maybe I didn't need it. So there's obviously, like when you cured this yourself and then saw that other people could do the same for depression, anxiety, bipolar, psychosis, was there a bit of a fright in that? Was there a bit of threat? Did you ever be like, whoa, I can't believe this is happening. I'm excited, but scared at the same time. And there's a fine line between those two. Was there anything like that for you?
I knew I didn't do it, because in the month protocol that I use for myself in ways, like a version of it, and that I've operationalized clinically for 10 years now, there's no supplements. I don't do anything. I don't even talk to my patients. I literally give them basic instructions and they go do it. Then I developed this, I just translated online, and there was a community, and then it got even more amplified. So then I was like, okay, the community's doing it. The community's healing it. But I knew I wasn't doing it. The only thing I was offering was something that we've been conditioned to think we need, which is permission. And I have offered that, and with my heart, with my confidence, and I have a very strong spine, and I am very, very difficult to scare. So I have vast experience with suicidal patients, probably 50% of my practice at any given time has been actively suicidal, and I don't flinch because I know it's part of the deal. When your old self is dying, you feel like your whole self is dying, and it's not true. So if I could just be there and reflect back to them, the reframe, the nature of what's happening, that then for the most part, it's resolvable. But I am not necessary if a community can do that. It's not like some special thing I did. So when I started to see these outcomes, I felt, most interested in what you're mentioning, which is, who's available for this? How does this happen? Mm-hmm. And what is it? Because I knew I was just holding space, so to speak. And that's when I kind of came, the closest I've come to answering that question is that readiness is, when moving in the direction of change feels like a relief. It feels like an exhale. Every step you take, you can't not, right? When it feels like you have to recruit that authoritarian kind of like self-flagellating whip and say, like, do this, you never do anything, like for yourself, and you should do this, and you said you were going to try it and you didn't all of that does not fly. But when it feels like, oh, I'm going, it's like falling down a hill, okay, here I go, I might as well relax my body because I'm going to be in or whatever. It's something you can't stop. And that's been a characteristic of every patient and program completer that I have seen has really just blossomed, just come out guns blazing. I was just talking to today, and this is public, Ali Zek is, you can find her on Instagram. She's a former patient of mine, and we've published her case report in the medical literature. It's a history-making case. She was, by all definition, severely mentally ill to the point of being disabled, mentally disabled.
Okay.
And I was the last stop, which is pretty common for holistic practitioners. You try all that, and then you're like, okay, what else is there? And it was about, there were a lot of physical gains. So that's what I like to offer, is like a roadmap for getting your physiology coherent. But then the rest of the path is all you. I don't know whether you need essential oils or homeopathy or a shaman or plant medicine. I have no idea. I couldn't possibly make recommendations around that. I am here to help open the door so you can activate that inner compass, remind yourself of your own power that you have been completely brainwashed, out of believing in. And then the rest is you. So, I've been with her on this multi-year journey, and I just have, Sarah was like, wow, Ali is just like, what a gift to the movement, and it's so true. I mean, what she creates, her voice, her truth, her passion, her heart, her clarity. I mean, this woman is like a modern day warrioress. And all I can do is just it brings tears to my eyes. Just like that might not have been, like that might have been under the label of sick.
Yeah.
So heartbreaking. It's grief inducing, what we are doing totally unconsciously. Because, like I said, I was writing these prescriptions too. Do you think I was trying to suppress the alleys of the world? No, of course I didn't know I was doing that. However, now there are inconvenient people like me in the world, and many others actually, Joanna Moncrief and Peter Bregan, who've been speaking out for decades actually. And so it's kind of like, how'd you miss the memo? You missed the memo because you chose not to read it at this point,
Yeah.
At a certain point in history, maybe it would have been more excusable.
What does the kind of the protocol look like in these online groups that you can, I say, host? Because I think another big player in this game, you probably know Matt Janes. You wrote a little memoir on his book, Saving Dad.
Yes.
He was on the podcast. Man, he helped me a lot through. Yeah, he helped me a lot get off medication too. But he says hi, by the way. I actually have a question for you that he wants to ask you something. I'll save it for the end. But what's this protocol look like? Because I have a feeling that people who judge too quickly might think it's some complicated thing that only the best of the best can do. I feel like the longer I'm on the earth, the more I enjoy living very simply and living so basically. Like when I see anxiety and depression rates and overprescribing and all of this, and in my community, and people convince themselves that they are an anxious person, like they label with the illness, I am a depressed person. And even people experiencing these emotions, like it's no wonder we're in front of screens all day. We don't exercise. We don't know what to eat. We don't sleep. Like it totally makes sense for the way we're living right now. And so what's your program all about? Is it taking notice of that and just getting back to basics and these basic pillars of quote unquote health?
So, yeah, I mean, I love what you said. I totally agree. And I often reference the Krishnamurti quote that's, it's no sign of health to be well adapted to a profoundly sick society, right? And we are calling, the so-called canaries in the coal mine, these very sensitive people, sensitive to wrong ways of living. We are calling them sick and broken, and they're believing it because there's a little part of all of us that says, I'm really fucked up. Something about me is wrong or different, terminally different in a bad way, right?
Terminally different. Yeah. Like I could cry tears of joy and frustration at the same time when you're talking about your friend who graduated the program. Like the talent I see in these people, like they're like, Scott, like, I've been given the medication. I'm depressed. Check out my artwork. This is what really makes me feel good. Like the talent, the ability is unbelievable in these people. And they're told the story, the chemical imbalance story, and it makes them feel like shit. Like they're going to have to deal with anxiety forever. Like I have anxiety, I have depression. The only option is to take medication for the rest of my life and manage it forever. And it's such a shame because there's such unbelievable potential in these people. And it always just gets to me. And yeah, I feel stuck. So, which is why I absolutely love what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a reclamation of power, and we all have to do it. It's just we have to do it in different ways, and we start in different places because we are all enslaved. We're indoctrinated and enslaved. We are waking up from that illusion, right? And I'm a big believer in this kind of Maslow's hierarchy of like an order of operations, right? So, so first start with the low hanging fruit. You know, if you have, you know, a diet induced B12 deficiency, or you have blood sugar instability, or, you know, you have gluten or dairy antigenicity, like where it's inflaming your brain. And that's very commonly one of the most rapidly reversible drivers of what we're calling chronic illness. You clean things up for 1 month. You may not have to go on some, you know, shamanic journey home to your child self. I had to. Maybe you don't, right? That's not for everyone. And maybe you will feel like $1 million and have this clear vessel where you're in touch with your yes and your no, and you know how to navigate the world and manifest prosperity and figure out what you're here to do, right? But start there. And to your point, you know, there's another woman, Lindsay Fleshhood, and she's also on Instagram, and which I'm in the process of leaving Instagram, but
why is that?
Just censorship, you know, just a little.
You're getting censored too?
Oh yeah, I have been for some time, and you know now I'm having posts taken down without any, literally taken from my account. Yeah, so moving to Telegram and MeWe.
Oh, good for you. Well,
aside,
even on Facebook and Instagram, if people starting, you know, even a keto groups or low carb groups for health, those are taken down too. Because
part of the game, you can't go to Tommy's sandbox and insist on playing your game. It's Tommy's sandbox. He's going to play his games. That's how it works. So I'm find out a victimhood around it. But anyway, Lindsay, I just commissioned an art piece from her because she was a medicated bipolar patient. Did this. She might have even done the protocol from one of my books, because this protocol is in both of my books. You can get at a library, literally. The more refined one is in Own Yourself, my most recent one. But regardless, I was not her doctor. And she is one of the most incredible artists I've ever, what she creates is it's my taste too. Like, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And what if that was like locked in this crumpled box where she thought that energy, whatever she channels, because now working with her in this commission piece, I see like, wow, what a wild process she has. You know, what if it was under the umbrella of like, ooh, gotta hide that, you know, from society kind of a thing. Right. So the protocol necessarily is self-done, right? So there's no supplements, there's no testing. And I was trained in functional medicine, where I don't know if you know much about functional medicine, but there can be a lot of testing associated, and sometimes that can be great, but sometimes that can also have a disempowering shadow where you need to rely on a practitioner, and you need to look at all the ways that you're messed up and take all these supplements, otherwise your amino acids are so all just daily lifestyle choices. So it's nutrition based. There's detox protocol that is rather controversial that I learned from my mentor, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez.
Sticking coffee up the ass. Yeah, I love it.
That totally changed my practice. So I'm not sure I ever would have opened my mind to it had I not had direct experience with his 27 years of history making outcomes in his cancer practice. And then it's relaxation response. So I'm trained in Kundalini yoga. I think you can get a real quick hit in 3 minutes. So that's what I teach, is these basic meditations, really kind of stripped down. And then, some people can do this on their own from a book. Some people really need more support. And so we have, different tiers. The protocol is meant to be like a month deep dive, but we found that there are a lot of people who are so intimidated by that and just can't conceive of breaking through the discomfort barrier of setting aside that month I'm still a big believer in it, just to know what your baseline is, addiction free. And when I say addiction, I mean also sugar and coffee and, all the things, refined flour. And so we created the membership model that is for little bite-sized lifestyle changes, but it's a spiral, right? And I do the membership challenges. We do one a month too. And it'll be, 15 minutes of grounding a day. So feet on the ground, or going to bed at 9 p.m. for a week. Or the hardest one for me at this stage still is drinking just like water as my beverage, right? So no matcha, like no kombucha, like just water. If you derive emotional satisfaction from your beverages, that's going to be hard, right? So you just learn more about yourself every time you take on one of these little self hacks in a way. But the defining feature and the field that I think confers the outcomes that we see is that me and Sayer, my partner, we walk the walk and we believe in the limitless potential of natural healing.
Yeah.
So, there are no pharmaceuticals in our household, period. With our children, nothing. We have 4.
Ibuprofen?
No.
Nothing.
God, no, nothing.
Wow.
And, it's also about the reframe, like if there's a fever in the household, it's not like, oh my God, so scary. What's going to happen to seizure? No, like you can also look at it as one of the most complex and sophisticated, like nearly symphonic responses that the body has inbuilt for a total clearing, for a total slate clearing. And I've gotten very interested in something called German New Medicine, which is an even deeper redefinition of what's going on, so that by the time you have symptoms, the problem is already solved, right? And it's the microbes that are in different tissues in your body that are facilitating the restructuring of the tissue that adapted to accommodate whatever stressor you brought on board, mostly through your psyche, right? Mostly through your perception. So we change our physiology through our perception. I always give this example of like, if you're walking down an alleyway, let's say you're like, a beautiful woman in a short skirt or whatever, and you're walking down an alleyway at night by yourself and you hear footsteps coming up behind you, what's going to happen? Your physiology is going to change. Rapid breathing, maybe sweating, racing heart. You're going to tighten up. You're going to prepare, through your stress response.
Mm-hmm.
If you hear your friend's voice coming from those footsteps, what's going to happen? You're going to laugh. You're going to expel the energy. You're going to calm down. Your heart's going to calm down. And that physiology is going to be totally undone. And the only thing that changed is you told yourself it's cool.
Right.
In this community, we, I think, are pretty expert at holding the space of it's cool. It's cool. It's cool.
Yes.
It's something you don't get to feel, because actually we're learning emotional mastery. We're learning how to feel feelings because we know that they're not going to kill us. And we know that feeling them actually is preventive medicine, right? So learning how to feel fear, learning how to feel anger. I just went to, an Osho dynamic meditation that my friend facilitated this morning. And I screamed and cried for 20 minutes this morning, literally in a room, with another friend. To me,
where do they do that? Are you in New York? Because I'm in a condo, and I used to practice dynamic meditation, but I'd have to go to the woods where no one can hear me, because the whole floor would hear me during my Osho practice.
That means you're doing it well. Yeah, so we're in Miami, and it's
so that's where you moved? You were in New York.
I've been here 2+ years, almost 2.5 years.
Whoa! But wait, did you move in different spots in Miami? Like recently? Yeah,
I'm in transition.
Okay.
I feel like I'm having a sex change. Yeah. I'm in I put my whole house in storage.
Wow.
So that's the thing to do once a year.
So you're the type of person that uses those storage units. I always drive by them on the highway. I'm like, who's using these things? Who has this much stuff?
I thought the same thing. No, but it's like satisfying, because my whole house, all my belongings are in this little cube. It's kind of like a condensed.
That is cool. So I think a big thing about your Vital Mind Reset, and I'm very cognizant of time, is that you have that community and the community of support, because even my good friend, may he rest in peace, John Cacioppo, who I'm a big fan of, he did a bunch of research saying, yes, when people are lonely, cortisol levels shoot through the roof, heart rate, blood pressure. Community actually changes your physiology too. So I think that's a huge part of what you're doing in this group, is like people are in it together. And how much more fun is that too? Right? Like, do you have people chatting with each other, holding each other accountable a little bit? You're on that journey as a community.
So exactly, we've done a lot of refinement and study of this over time, and we had a Facebook community, right? And that worked really well for a time.
Yeah.
And then Facebook, in my opinion, revealed its true colors, and I started to be censored in my own group, and it was just very dark vibes in there, like just energetically, it got kind of like not great. And I decided to leave Facebook. So I closed down all my communities on Facebook. And it was also at the same time that we started to recognize we need more now, right? At this point in time, like, chitty chatty in a thread is one thing, but we want to see, that's why like how many YouTube videos are you watching a day? Because I'm, BitChute or YouTube, I'm watching probably like 6 a day on
right.
the regular, right? We want to see each other. We want to just get a little more of that humanity through the pixels. And so we've changed the format for Vital Mind Reset to small group video based, Zoom calls, facilitated by Jamie Davidson, who is like, wow, angel from on high, who came to my life a couple of years ago now. And she's just, her heart is like too big for her body. So it's really a powerful kind of community that's a bit more intimate, and then people connect as they want to. And we do the same thing in Vital Life Project. The groups are bigger, but each different one of, there's men's groups, and there's me, I run a group, and Jamie runs a group, and it's just face to face, which feels really good until and if, I have a community here that feels like one of my greatest manifestations in this lifetime. Like-minded people, we think similarly. We, this whole experience, let's say, since March, we've all been on the same wavelength, and, I don't know, it's a gift, right? So an in-person community is not really replaceable, by a digital community. And I've learned that only through my personal experience. But you know what? Your body gets the sense memory and awakens to, I think, calling that in when you have that, when you can let your guard down and be like, oh, these people know what I am thinking, talking about, what I've been through, at least in some way. And we can start from like letter O in the alphabet versus like letter B,
Yeah. And that, I think like that is the feeling, I swear to God, that humans are chasing for a long time, is to have a best friend or a person where you can be politically incorrect as fuck. You can say the wrong thing, but they just know, hey, it's you. Oh my God, what a feeling of connection and compassion. Now, I know we're almost out of time. One more question. Actually, two. One, you came out with a few pieces of literature over the years, but a few very recently. One I want to mention is the one about Tapering Protocol. I looked everywhere for this, and there's so little information about tapering. I looked for a very long time. There's nothing good. And when you talk to your doctor, it's like, okay, here's a timeline, and just decrease by this many milligrams over time. So what's this protocol and this piece of literature? This is amazing stuff.
Yeah. So, when these outcomes started to, come to my awareness, both online and in my practice, I just felt like people need to know that this is possible. And how do I could write a blog about it. But then there was kind of like this mischievous part of me that was like, I'm gonna be a little disruptive on PubMed and just like throw one or two of these that are inconvenient, on there. I know how to write, a medical report, and then I thought, okay, you know what? I need a little help because there's a lot of them. And I put a call out for clinical volunteers, and we amassed this, kind of, ad hoc group of physicians. And we started writing these up. And so at this point, gosh, I don't know, I think we have like 10 or so case reports that, as far as I know, have never been replicated in medical history. And I get this spirit, I think, from my mentor, Nick, because he always said, match my cases, and he always challenged the oncology community to match his cases of, 34-year stage 4 pancreatic cancer survival. It's never happened. It's never been documented. It's not probably possible, maybe even because of the mindset of the disempowered, dependent patient. It may be that simple. It may not even be about the toxic chemo and radiation. Who knows? However, then we started to ramp up into what's called a case series, which is 12 patients, and looking at, how these 12 patients progressed either when they started a medication taper with me or when they had already kind of skid off the road with protracted withdrawal, and could they recover? So it's important to demonstrate, both were possible. And most recently, because of Dr. Rob Abbott, who's a now friend who, again, fell from the sky and said, let's do a randomized trial of Vital Mind Reset. And we got IRB approval. And I mean, he's just brilliant. And we worked with these wonderful volunteers to have this trial, randomized controlled trial. We just finished it. And in 44 days, these people who I never met, so they didn't have a doctor, right? And it was just lifestyle choices. They had characteristics of moderate depression.
Okay.
And they experienced more than 50% symptom relief. So according to medical, literature and psychiatric research in the PHQ-9, which is the test that was used, that's statistically significant. And this was in a month. I never have treated a patient for just 1 month.
When they were still on their medication though, or some were off?
Changed. Yeah, nothing else was changed. And that's how I do it in my practice. You're on meds, you stay. You're off meds, you stay off.
Got it.
Make no changes to pharmaceuticals for the first month. That includes birth control, includes everything, stays static.
Yeah.
And the only thing, don't start any supplements. That's the only kind of other instruction.
Yeah.
But it's been really fun. I don't know. It's exciting to me. And I don't know who cares, it kind of feels like I'm throwing these papers out into a wind tunnel because I don't know, who cares, literally. Because I've been largely... You got one fan right here. I care. But, in the medical community, I've been, ignored since my first book in 2016, which was blacklisted. And I was not slandered. There weren't hit pieces and smear pieces. That didn't come till later. And it's just kind of it even made the New York Times list somehow. And this is not a one negative review of it online. It's so bizarre. It was just totally ignored, which I'm happy with, but that's kind of still been the case. So it's not like I'm looking to debate with the medical orthodoxy or anything. I'm not interested in that. But for some of us, it's important. For me, where I was when I was diagnosed, I would have liked to see these kinds of papers. They would have had impact, if not just placebo effect level, for me.
Yeah, totally. And I guess that's a mission of a lot of activists, let's say, or even for me, it's I put content out what I wish I knew 10 years ago. Right. And so for people in that stage, and I totally believe what you said from my experience, everyone has their own time of discovery, awakening, and when they want to start a new journey or change paths, things happen at certain times. And I think it's really evident when you really look at these kind of case studies and people that you work with. I think that's all the time we have, although I have 28 more questions. So we'll have to do this again.
Oh my God, everyone's heard enough of me, I'm pretty sure.
No way. Oh, so much more to talk about. We didn't even get into misconceptions about depression and anxiety and oh my gosh, but we'll save it for another time. Matt Janes did have a question though.
Oh, tell me.
I think I want to word it correctly. Are all mental illnesses people who are parasympathetic dominant?
That's a very, very good question. And I wrote about this. I don't know if I've written about it in a blog. Normally I have a lot of my material in blogs for free online, but this maybe. Anyway, this is a rubric that I learned from my mentor, Nick, this parasympathetic and sympathetic dominant spectrum. I'm a sympathetic dominant. I am somebody who's much more prone to anxiety. I've never felt depressed a day in my life. Yeah. And parasympathetic dominants are, I think, by and large, those who experience depression, ADHD, that there's a kind of energetic signature of the creative person, the artist, that when mischanneled, misguided, when with their sensitive physiology, when they're eating a bunch of crap, can go really, haywire and land them in the medical system, and they get labeled with these things.
Right.
But not all mental illness fits that category. Most, in my experience, this template that is a parasympathetic dominant diet that I work with is perfect for the month starting. However, the animal food content may not be right for you. And I've had, patients who have gone on to more vegetarian style of eating, but that's because they found out what their preferences are, which you can only do when you're not being yoked in every direction by, sugar addiction and this roller coaster of endocrine, response to your processed food diet. So it's a safe assumption for people who struggle with depression and ADHD, I would say. And then beyond that, it's just a template to start with and refine.
Got it. There you go, Matt. You happy? I was fangirling, but he was too. He's like, "You're talking to who?" Because he's in your group.
Of course. No.
So there you go.
Cool. Yeah.
Everyone listening and watching, Kelly's links are in the description. Please check out her website. There's so many freebies, so many blog posts, so many free PDFs and takeaways. You'll learn a heck of a lot. And her membership groups are on the website as well. Check out her Instagram, even though she's leaving. All the social links are below. Kelly, thank you so, so much.
Awesome. Thank you.